Hello and welcome. My name is Bethany. I am on the support team. I'm a consultant on the client services team. For my breakout session, we're going to be talking about options for multi-language Lighthouse Studio and Discover surveys. So without further ado, let's get started. So we often get this question all the time on support is that I have a survey that needs to be in Spanish, German, and French. How do I change the languages of my survey? Well, you've come to the right place. So just kind of some goals for today, just so you know our outline where we're going. So we're first going to talk about what the multi-language surveys mean to you as the survey author. And then we're going to talk about different ways to tackle a multi-language survey. And then we'll walk through both Lighthouse Studio and Discover platforms. Okay, so what does a multi-language survey mean to you as the survey programmer? So we basically need to change the text based on what the respondent needs, right? If I'm a respondent and I need to see this language in Spanish, then you need to show it to me in Spanish. If I need to see it in English, I'll see it in English. So what we're going to do is we're going to translate the text. And something to keep in mind is that translating the text itself doesn't change any of the programming on the back end. So if I'm taking a survey in English and I pick the first option, red, my data will be coded as a 1. Now, if I go through the same survey or if someone else goes through the survey and they're seeing it in Spanish and they pick rojo, their data is still going to be coded as a 1. So we're not changing anything on the back end when we translate our survey. One thing to keep in mind when you are translating your survey with either of the methods that we're going to be talking about is to watch out for custom code in your survey. We had someone call in a month ago or so, and one of their survey languages, their translator had changed some of their if-then statements. So they had changed the word if to whatever it was translated to, like in Spanish or Portuguese or whatever it was, so their code wasn't working. So that's something that you want to look out for when you're translating your survey, is watch out if you have any kind of custom coding in your survey. Okay. So methods to tackle a multi-language survey. Generally, there's 2 different options to program a multi-language survey. The first is to have one survey for each language. So if I have an English survey and a Spanish survey and a German survey, then I will have 3 separate copies of my survey, and each one will be translated. The other way is to use code like Perl or JavaScript or something like that to dynamically change the text based on a question or a variable. So our first option, parallel surveys, we're first going to program our survey from beginning to end, our skip logic, our CBC exercise, everything in one language. And then we're going to make a copy of it. And then we're going to translate that copy. So now we have, to Spanish, right? So we have an English copy and now we have a Spanish copy. And then we're going to send both up to the server. We're going to collect our respondents, and then we will need to merge our data together afterwards. So we'll merge our English respondents with our Spanish respondents. An all-in-one survey is the other option, to use some kind of code to change the text based on what our respondent needs. So if I need to see English, then the code will say, oh, she needs to see it in English, show it to her in English. If she needs to see it in Spanish, we'll show it to her in Spanish. So on the next slide, I'll show you kind of what this looks like from the respondent's perspective. So what we're going to see on the next slide is a respondent's going to click on English. We're going to see like the intro, welcome to the survey, and in English, and then we'll hit back and we'll switch to Spanish, and then we'll see that the text changes. This is all in one survey, so we're not skipping between surveys or anything like that. So we'll pick our English language and we'll hit next. It'll say, thank you for taking this survey. We'll go back and change to Spanish, and now it's going to show the same thing, but now in Spanish. Okay. So for the all-in-one survey, we do need to know what language the respondent prefers. So this could be a question at the very beginning of your survey, like we just saw in the last example, where they pick English or Spanish or Dutch or German or something like that. Or it could be a pass-in field. If you're linking from another platform or from your panel provider and you know the language that the respondent needs beforehand, that can be a simple pass-in field or a survey linking variable. And then we can use that data, that question or that variable, to dynamically change our text. So if I come in and my language says 1, then that's going to be, we're going to show it to you in English. And if my language is 2, then we're going to show it to you in Spanish. If it's 3, then it's German, whatever. Okay, this is a manual process. So you do need to build the code for each of your text fields in your survey. I do have some tips and kind of some helpful hints for how to do that, but it is a manual process. So which method is better? We often get that question as well on support. So for parallel surveys, when you have a survey in each language, you don't have to worry about any kind of custom coding because you have one English and one Spanish and one German. And if you program it right, you can easily merge the data together super quick. Some of the cons is that you do have to merge the data together. You have one survey for your English respondents and one survey for your Spanish respondents. So if you want to analyze them together, you have to bring both data sets together. So this is not great in Discover right now. So in Discover, you can't merge data from 2 different surveys together. It's also very tedious to have one survey for each language if you have a lot of languages. Let's say you're fielding to 10 different languages. That means you have to have 10 different surveys. And if you have to change skip logic, let's say, or add a question, then you have to do that in each and every single version of your survey. And then you have to upload them and make sure that everything's working out okay. Okay? For our all-in-one survey, where we use code to dynamically change the text, we don't have to worry about merging the data together, so that's an advantage. All the surveys take the same survey, they just see it in a different language. It's also a little bit easier to manage quotas. So if you have maybe a quota that just says, I want 500 males and 500 females to come through my survey, but you don't necessarily, it doesn't matter what language they see, then that's a little bit easier to manage in one survey. Some disadvantages is that you do need to know some kind of coding. And since you do have code, it's a little bit trickier to error check if you do get some errors in your code. So without further ado, let's talk ice cream. Let's jump into the software. So we will do that here. I have a survey that I have programmed here in Lighthouse Studio. And we have, I have just like a welcome to the survey question. I have how often do you eat ice cream? And then I have this MaxDiff exercise about the best types of flavors for MaxDiff or for ice cream. And then we have some other questions that I just want some demographic data on. So this survey is programmed from beginning to end. I have my skip logic that I need. I have everything all set up. So what I'm going to do, Lighthouse Studio has this really handy way of exporting all the text that I need, all the text for my survey. So if I come up here to the File menu in the top left corner, I'll come down to where it says Translation. Then I will export my text for translation. And this is just a helpful window. It's not hard-coded into the file, but it's just helpful so you know I'm going from English and I'm going to translate it into Spanish. So I'm going to hit this export button and it'll ask me where to save it. I'll save it in my downloads folder. Okay. So we can open that up just so we can see what it looks like. Okay. So as you can see, we have my how often do you eat ice cream question. We have how old are you? We have each of our ice cream flavors. We have some fields for some error messages. So if the respondent picks something that they're not supposed to or something like that. We have, welcome to my survey. How often do you eat ice cream? Whatever. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send this file to my translator and they're going to translate it into Spanish. Some things to keep in mind is that, so I do have a little bit of custom coding in my survey. So what I can do with this translation file, whatever is in this column C, will be imported into the software. So if I have a missing row or something like that, so if I delete this row, I can delete this row and then that row won't be changed at all. So that footer of that one question, I don't remember what it was, it will stay in the default text. So maybe if I don't want to change this frequency question, I can delete it and it will always appear in English. Okay, so I'm going to send that to my translator and they're going to translate it for me. So now what I need to do is I need to come in here in Lighthouse Studio. So I only have one copy of my English survey, and we're going to show you how to do like parallel surveys first. So I've translated my text. So I'm going to come up here to File, and I'm going to create a duplicate of this English survey, and I'm going to translate that duplicate into Spanish. Okay, so I'll have an English and a Spanish version. So I'll come up here to File and then Save Study As. This will create a copy just like a Word document would, and I'll just call it Span for Spanish. I'll click OK, and it will open it up for me. So now what I can do, so I've translated my survey, I have this duplicate copy of my survey, so what I'm going to do is, I don't need to save that one. Okay, so in my Spanish one, I'm going to come up to this File menu, and we're going to import that translated document. So I'll come down here to Translation, and this time I'll pick Import Translated Text. And I will just need to find that translated document, which is right here. And I'll click Open, and it'll say, hey, we read in the file, and it was imported successfully. So now what we're going to see is when I open up my questions, everything will be in Spanish. Okay? So now moving forward, I will test this survey just to make sure that I translated everything right, that everything makes sense in both languages, both in English and in Spanish. And once I've done that, then I can host both surveys, collect my respondents, and then we're going to merge our data together. I've actually collected some dummy data here, so let me open those up. Okay, so I have my English data and I have my Spanish data here. Now you'll notice I've collected 20 respondents, right? I have 20 English and 20 Spanish. So, but you'll notice that my respondent numbers are exactly the same. So I'm gonna have to add, 300 or something like that so that the software doesn't think that I have two identical respondents. So I can do that, and then I'll just line up all the columns and I'll merge these two Excel files together so that then it looks like this. So now I have my English respondents on the top and my Spanish respondents on the bottom. And I can go ahead and import this file into Lighthouse Studio and analyze my MaxDiff data, okay? So that's parallel surveys. We have one survey for each language. We field them, we translate them, we field them, we merge our data together later. And that's one option. That's totally fine. We see that all the time, and that's an easy option if you're not comfortable using code or anything like that, okay? So I'm going to show you a different option. Now we're going to show the one all-in-one option. So I'm going to come back to my my English survey that I have. Again, with my code option, I want to program, well, generally, I like to program my survey from beginning to end, make sure I've gotten all the kinks ironed out and everything, and then I'll translate it. So one thing that you'll need to do, remember, we'll have to create either a question that the respondent picks their language, or we'll have to make like a pass-in field or something if we're linking from a panel provider or something like that. So in this survey, I've actually made a pass-in field. So I can either, add a question here at the beginning that says, hey, pick your language. But in this case, I'm going to use a pass-in field. So if I come up here to this key icon, or if I double click this start question, and if I go to the pass-in fields tab, I've made a pass-in field. It's called language select. It could be anything. And I've set the data type to whole number, just so it makes it a little bit easier with my skip logic. My skip logic and the code that we're gonna talk about. So I've done that, which is great. So I'm gonna click OK. I'll save that. We're gonna do the same thing. So I'll come up here to File, and I'll come down here to Translation, and I'll still need to export my text for translation. I'll still need to translate it, right? So I have my English column and my Spanish column of text. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna sandwich some code in between to swap the languages. So if I pick English, then the code's gonna say, okay, show her English. If I pick Spanish, show me Spanish. So I'll kind of show you what that looks like. So if we see on this screen, we can do this in Perl, or we can do this in CSS or JavaScript or something like that. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to grab the language that we need, and then we'll show our text that first language, so my English. And then we're going to swap the languages and show the Spanish, and then we're going to end our code. So that's kind of the basic code structure. We're sandwiching in our English and our Spanish text together with some code to swap the languages based on what the respondent needs, okay? So one of our developers, his name is Zach, he made an Excel macro that will actually do this for us, lickety-split. So I'll show that to you here really quick. Let me open back up that translated document that I had. So again, we have my English and my Spanish data, and I will open up the macro. Okay, so we're gonna show a CSS JavaScript version of this. So this is what the tool looks like when I very first open it up. So I will need to enable editing. And then since this is a macro, I will need to enable the content. Okay, so a couple things. This is really a plain Jane kind of a thing. So we have this big blue box here, we have this run button, and we have this language question name. So the language question name is what the code is going to use to switch the language. That can be, again, your question, or in this case, a pass-in field. So I'll just go back to my survey. I'll hit this key icon, and mine was called language select. So I will fill that in here, language select. And then I'm just going to copy my columns from my translation file to this macro. Okay, so I copied in all my columns. I can double check and make sure my translation looks great. But in order for this code to work, we actually need one extra bit of code. We just need to make sure that we have in my translation file, let me make these a little bit bigger. I need to make sure that I have the HTML header tag for my entire survey. And that's just survey settings, headers and footers, HTML head. And this is outputted regularly when you export your text for translation. I just didn't translate it because I didn't have any text in there to translate. Yeah, I will need this line, this row, in order for the code to work, okay? And that's it. And then my English and my Spanish can be left empty. That's totally fine, okay? So that's it. I'm gonna hit run now. And nothing happens. There's no confetti or anything like that, which maybe we'll get that in the next development. But I'm just gonna pull back the curtain here a little bit just so we can see what the code has done on the back end. So let me make these columns a little bit bigger just so we can see what's happening. Okay, so this is our header and footer HTML tag. So this is the code. And I'll show you where we can find this in the software. But this is just the code that is needed to grab our value from our language select question and use it in the code. So if we look at this, how often do you eat ice cream thing, it has the code, and then it has I eat it every week, and then it swaps the code and it says the Spanish version, okay? So I'll just go ahead and hide that again. So that's there just if you want to see how the code's working. So I will go ahead and save this. Since this is a macro, it has the XLSM, I'll need to save this as just a regular Excel workbook, so an XLSX. And I can rename it if I want to. I'm just going to save this back in my downloads folder. So we save it as an XLSX in order for Lighthouse Studio to read it. So I'll hit save. It'll say, hey, you're going to lose your macro capabilities, and that's fine. So I'll click yes from there. So it saves it. We'll close out of that, and then we're going to do the same thing. So in my Lighthouse Studio survey, I'll come up here to File, and I'll say Translation, and I'll say Import my translated text, and I will grab my Downloads folder, that Excel macro that we just made, okay? So I'll click OK. It'll read it. It'll say success, and then it was imported successfully, okay? So now what we're going to see, if I open up my questions, let's look at this welcome to the survey question. So now, look, see it has the the code that we need, and then it says English, and then if it's Spanish, then we'll show the Spanish text, okay? So it's built it for us, right? Now I'll still want to go through and I want to test my survey and different things like that, but now my survey is translated. And that code that I was talking about before is just in the survey settings. So if I just hit that gear icon, you can also hit it here. So the gear icon, and then we'll come to the advanced tab and the HTML head tag. So this just says, hey, my data language is grab me this question name or this variable name, okay, with some Sawtooth script, okay? So that's what we're using to change the code. Super easy, super straightforward, and you don't have to know any kind of coding. So that's really great. So I can actually test the survey just so we can kind of see what the respondent would see. So remember, I have a pass-in field, so I need to put in a value. So first will be 1. So that means we'll see it in English. And so we'll click next, and it says, oh, look, it's in English. And if I hit the test button again, and this time I pick Spanish, which is 2, then it'll be in Spanish. How cool is that? Okay, so that's Lighthouse Studio. So in Lighthouse Studio, we can either have parallel surveys, so one survey in each language, or we can use some code and build out the survey so all of our respondents come to one and all in one survey, okay? So I will show you Discover now as well, just so we can kind of get a good idea of how to do this in Discover. And if we're in, let's go to our website, sawtoothsoftware.com. If I just hit up in this search icon, multi-language Discover, it should come up with this knowledge base article that says how to add multi-language content to Discover surveys. So in Discover, it's kind of similar to what I just showed you in Lighthouse Studio, but this article just kind of walks you through how to program this kind of a survey. So it says, okay, here's the code that you need to switch your language. Remember, we have the code, then English, and then the code in Spanish. And then this is the information that you'll need for the survey settings. So we'll go into our survey settings, and in our footer for our entire survey, we'll paste this code in, okay? So let me just come up here to my Discover, and we'll open up my survey. Okay, so this is the same survey as in Lighthouse Studio. We have, thank you for taking our survey. We have how often do you eat ice cream. We have our max stiff exercise and our demographic data. First of all, I'm going to need, again, to either make a question or a pass-in field. So if I wanted to, or I think we call it a survey linking variable in Discover. So if I wanted to do that, I'd come over here to survey settings, and I come here to survey link variables, and I'd add a new survey link variable, okay? But in this case, I'm going to actually add a question. So I'll add a select question. We'll drag it to the top here, and we'll call this language. And then I'll put in my please pick your language. And then we'll add English and Spanish. And then I need to do the same thing in Spanish. So I'd say, por favor, seleccione su idioma or whatever. So I need to do that first. Anyway, so again, program my survey from beginning to end, and now I'm gonna add in that language filter. So I've actually done this just to kind of make it a little quicker. So I have my language select question here, and I have my survey. We'll hide this just so, anyway. So what I need to do now is I first need to add this little bit of code to my header or my footer for my survey. So I'm going to copy this. I'm actually going to paste it to a text editor. We need to fix this. We need to fix this on our website. We're working on it right now. But do you notice that there's these little squares in the code? Those are like spaces to make the code look nice on the website, but we'll need to delete those just in order for the code to actually run. So I'll just delete all of these little squares here. So just to kind of walk you through this code a little bit, so this part on line 6, it says language. So again, it has that Sawtooth script, and it says, hey, look at this language question, and grab me that value from the question. So again, if you called your question or that pass-in field language, you can leave it like that. Or if you called it language select or something like that, then you need to update the code here. And then we have our if logic. So if that language question is a 1, then we're going to see the English survey. If it's a 2, we're going to show the Spanish survey. If I have another language like German, I can just copy this little bit of code and paste it here and say, okay, well, if my language ID is 3, then we're going to see the German survey. Okay? So that's what we would do in that case. And then again, down here, it just says, hey, English survey, English. I don't really know what all these CSS, I'm not a CSS guru. I just know that the code works. So if I needed to add another language, then I would copy this and paste it at the end and rename it German, right? Okay. So I'm going to copy, oh, I don't need the Sawtooth software. We don't need that. So I'm going to copy this from my text editor, copy that, hop back into my Discover survey. And I will come here to my survey settings. And in my footer, I'll hit this little code editor icon. And that's where I'm going to edit my code. So I'll paste it in here, which I've already done. And it likes to format it nice and pretty. But so this is my code. Okay, this is what, this will load with every page of my survey. Okay. So now I'll need to go through each of my questions and translate them. So my intro text, I'll have to translate, welcome to my survey. We're going to ask you some questions about ice cream. We're going to have to translate that into Spanish. So Discover, unfortunately, doesn't have a quick and easy option. We ought to export the text like we have in Lighthouse Studio. We are working on some updates to Discover, so stay tuned for those because we know that multi-language surveys are kind of a pain. So just stay tuned for those. So let's say that you had your client or something like that sent you over like a Word document of here's all the questions that you need to have and here's all the survey options and whatever else. We can take that kind of a document and translate that pretty quickly. So I'm just going to come over here. I just have an Excel workbook open here that this is exported from Lighthouse Studio. But anyway, if you had like, you know, your survey questions and everything like that, and you had the English and the Spanish texts, you can build out this code pretty easily. I like Excel's concatenate function. It concatenates, you know, different cells and you can add text in between or whatever. So that's kind of a trick that I like to use when I'm doing a Discover survey. So if we come back here to the website and come back here to our little article, our knowledge base article, it says, okay, you need to have these span tags in front of the English text, and then you need this span tag in between the English and the Spanish, and then you need this end span tag, okay, after the Spanish text. So what I can do in Excel really easily is I can actually say, okay, grab me, okay, so I have that span English language tag, and then I have that end span, and then the Spanish language, and then that final tag. Okay, so I'm just kind of mirroring what we have on our website. So what I can do now is I can actually use a concatenate function. So I'm going to go equals concatenate. So it concatenates a list or a range of text strings. So I want to first, so this will just paste everything together. So I'll grab this one, and then I'll grab my English text here. So every week, comma, and we'll need to swap to my Spanish language, and then put in our Spanish text, and then end with our code. Okay, so I'm actually going to protect some of these cells here, just so I can drag them. Okay, so now you'll see, okay, so it pastes the entire string together, just the way that we need it in Discover. So it says, hey, English language, show me the English text. Spanish language, show me the Spanish text. And having it in Excel is kind of easy because then I can just, since I protected some of those cells, I can just drag it down and it will apply to all of the cells. So about once a month, and then it, so it builds out the code for us. Yeah, so these cells can move, but these ones are stuck. Those ones are the protected cells. Anyway, so then I can just copy this. So this is for my every week. I eat ice cream every week, and I can hop back into my Discover survey. And this is in my frequency question. So I'll go ahead and edit that. And I'll hit this little pencil icon next to every week. And again, this code editor, because we want to run code, not necessarily just text, and I'll paste this in here, okay? So it says, hey, if it's English language, then show English, Spanish, Spanish. I think I've said that at least 100 times during this presentation, so I'm sorry for that. So I'll click done, and this doesn't really get updated, but that's fine, okay? And I will do that for all of my list items, all of my questions, my max diff exercise. So in here, I can edit this text here at the top. So if I hit the edit, oh, just kidding. I have to do that in my max diff exercise settings. So I'll come over here to max diff exercise settings. For all of my list items, I'll hit this pencil icon, code editor, put in my code. And then the format question text, which of these 5 flavors would you pick that are the best? Hit the code editor icon, paste in that code, okay? So that's what we need to do for everything. Our my best and worst labels, code goes there as well, okay? So as you probably noticed when we were on my questions page, it actually has both my English and my Spanish text at the same time with this code. And that's fine because we're just previewing the question. But if I come up here and test my survey, then I'll pick my language, click next, then it'll actually run the code. So I'll only see the English or the Spanish text, okay? So that is multilanguage survey programming kind of in a nutshell. So we talked about that changing the language doesn't change any of the coding on the back end. We talked about the different options. We can have one survey for each language, or we can have some code to change our language. Either one works just fine. There's not, we talked about the different pros and cons between the methods, and then we jumped into the software. So that's kind of what my presentation was on today. So if you have any questions or anything like that, feel free to reach out to support. We are happy to help answer your questions. Call us in, send us an email. We are more than happy to help you programming your multilanguage survey.